The topic of my talk today is dealing with conditions. I would like to start with some quotes by Ernest Holmes. In the book Love and Law, he says, "Here is a way to do it. You are not dealing with conditions, you are dealing with thought. Thought, nothing else. Thought and spirit." In the Science of Mind textbook we read, "While it is true that wrong conditions exist, they could not remain unless there was someone to experience them. Consequently, the experience must be in consciousness. Change the consciousness, and the false condition will disappear." And my last quote, also from the Science of Mind textbook, "The possibility of demonstrating does not depend upon environment, condition, location, personality, or opportunity. It depends solely upon our belief and our acceptance and our willingness to comply with the law through which all good comes." My question is, can we control conditions? If yes, do we control those conditions? A few months ago, I received a letter from the tax office in Germany. Surprise, surprise. Claiming that I owed them income tax for a past period of 7 years, from 2008 to 2014. And that puzzled me, to describe it mildly. Actually, it made me angry, it made me mad, actually very angry, full stop. I've been living in South Africa since 1970, with an interruption of 4 years when I worked in Germany. I do receive a small monthly pension from Germany, which I have declared in my South African tax return. So for me, there was actually nothing strange about it. But the Germans seem to have thought about differently. The amount claimed by the German tax department was not very high, but to me it certainly had quite a nuisance value. It was less nuisance. The more I thought about it, the more aggravated I got. This issue appeared eventually as some kind of an almost insurmountable condition, which I seemed to nourish and nurture with all kinds of judgments and negative thoughts, just feeling sorry for myself. I was in reaction mode once again. The control freak within me was definitely in charge. And then eventually I got tired of that. I had enough of these circling thoughts in my head, and I asked myself what my options were. Moving away from the apparent problem, I wanted to find some kind of a satisfactory solution. What were some of the options? Paying the requested amount, I didn't fancy that very much. Praying on it, asking for help, surrender my need to control. Oh, I thought there were options, more than one. I thought and felt better almost immediately. I did pray on it, and an idea came to mind to speak to somebody who had shared with me recently a similar event. I did this, and I was referred to a tax consultant in Germany who deals with this type of situation and who was willing to take this case, of course, for a charge. And the outcome was positive. Really, really good, well worthwhile. So I learned to see beyond the apparent condition instead of getting stuck in an apparent problem. What a relief. At an earlier stage in my life, at the beginning of my Science of Mind studies, and also at a more advanced stage of these studies, I got sometimes confused about controlling condition. Because in our Science of Mind declaration of principles we read, we believe in the control of conditions through the power of this mind. I felt frustrated and somewhat useless because there were quite a few so-called conditions in my life or in my life experience which I seemed to be unable to control. For instance, occasional shortage of money, being overweight, lack of focus on my studies, unhappy with my work in the corporate world, etc., etc. And to ask myself, was I really meant to control conditions? Or was I perhaps missing something? Do I perhaps have to fix something? And so I had a conversation with myself. It was actually more of a monologue. I asked whether conditions are actually real. And I seem to recall that one of the foundational beliefs in metaphysical understanding is that conditions are not real. But then how often do I hear people talk about or discussing, even arguing about life events, for instance, war, poverty, crime, politics and politicians, very popular topic, etc., etc. And then they state with conviction and emphasis, this is the reality. Don't you see it? But is it the reality? Well, what is reality? What is real about all these things which are being fed in the daily news or in conversations with other people, harping on the negative and often hopeless aspects? I had recently something about some research that had been done where it was found that people who watch the news every day see the world less realistically than people who don't watch the news. Well, there's some food for thought, and I think I go along with that actually. I also tend to watch less and less news, and I feel quite much better about that. In my understanding of reality, I go along with Ernest Holmes, who said, reality is the truth about anything. Reality is the truth about anything. That which is indestructible, incapable of decay, unchanging and everlasting. Are facts unchanging or everlasting? No, I don't think so. What is real is a spiritual self. The soul self is in each and every one of us. The condition is nothing more or nothing less than a fact. We believe in that particular fact, and that seems to make it true for us. But as we know, these facts do change, sometimes very quickly and dramatically, being replaced by a new set of facts. So that means they're not real. They're only transient, floating, passing. When I feel confronted with so-called realities, which are actually only passing facts, I try to focus on one of my favorite quotes, which is, that too shall pass. And that includes everything, the so-called good and the so-called bad. And so far in my life experience, it has always been proved as true. This too shall pass. I'm sure some of us have heard or experienced something like a miraculous healing. If not, I suggest to go to Google and Google it up. You will find endless writings of so-called miraculous healings. So if you have a few hours to spare or a few days to spare, be my guest. It's quite an interesting study, actually. There are many records on healing where doctors or other experts declared that the patient's condition was incurable. And against all odds, the patient recovered and lived happily thereafter. No scientific reason could be given. I remember an example of my childhood. A grand-uncle of mine was given a diagnosis of an incurable illness and that he would need to be hospitalized for the rest of his life. Quite a grim outlook. However, his wife did not accept that verdict. She was somehow involved with Christian Science, and she claimed that the word incurable has no space in her consciousness. She believed in the power of prayer. And lo and behold, her husband, my dear grand-uncle, recovered into good health and lived happily for many years thereafter, together with his family. So to me, that made actually a very, very deep impression. And I can still see my little aunt or grand-aunt in front of me. She was a very tiny person, tiny, but she had an immense power. She just had something within herself which was powerful and beyond what I could understand. But I really embraced her so much because I thought her faith was of such great help. So I think that made a great impression, and I think that also contributed to my ever-growing interest in metaphysical studies and eventually finally the science of mind teaching and practice. For me, it's important not to get stuck in a particular condition or limited situation and to see and become aware of the presence of God, of spirit, universe, or whatever we may choose to call it. Knowing that I'm bigger than this, bigger than any situation or any circumstance, and that I'm never separated from spirit or God or source. We probably may have to deal with current conditions which we created by our current beliefs, conscious or unconscious. But I trust that we do know that we can change our beliefs. We can get rid of rules, and rules are what is known as bullshit rules. And we can really think about what rules run my life. Are they still valid or still true? Or have I just picked it up in my early childhood and I might still hang on to that? But that can be changed. Beliefs are formed by our conscious thoughts, and we can consciously change those thoughts. With every change in our thought, we are likely to have a different experience. Looking at conditions, I find it helpful to remember that God or Spirit is present everywhere, also in a condition I might be facing right now. And knowing this and realizing it takes a sting out of it and helps me to become aware of something I need to learn. For me, the question arises, what would love do now? Certainly not to fight the condition, but to allow it to unfold an inherent gift, perhaps seeing a bigger picture, or practice some forgiveness, or seeing an opportunity to serve. Thank you for being with me, for listening with me. Namaste and God bless.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of